This video is part of the preparatory materials for the Design Approaches to Research, Tools and Techniques project. Our second topic for this series is design critique. Design critique is the process of analyzing a design and giving actionable and respectful feedback. It enables cooperation and collaboration. In this video, we will introduce some of the do's and don'ts in running a design critique session. Critiques can happen at any stage in the design process, and usually, there will be different critique sessions for several iterations of the same project. There are two main roles in the design critique session: presenter and reviewer. Both roles can involve multiple people. The presenter shares their design or their concept, methods, and process, while the reviewers offer informed thoughts and perspectives. It is the presenter's responsibility to show the design, provide unnecessary context, and articulate the decision behind the design. The presentation should be around 15 minutes in order to contextualize the project and provide details of the plan. Depending on the size of the team and the critique format, some of the roles may need to be doubled up. For example, one person on the presenter side may need to play the role of note-taker. The note-taker is responsible for capturing important insights and questions that come up, including any off-topic that needs to be discussed later. The role of the note-taker needs to be assigned before the critique session. Reviewers are the primary audience of the critique session and should include the relevant stakeholders. Their responsibility is to provide constructive feedback about the design. Every participant needs to understand their role and what is expected from them before, during, and after the critique. A design critique session is not just another meeting. It needs to be prepared and systematically conducted. Here is an example of what would not be considered as a design critique session. You may often use the thank you or the any questions slides at the end of your presentation as an opportunity to collect some feedback or comments. However, the feedback or comments you get under these circumstances is quite like a buffet. What you received may be a mixture of personal preferences, options, or suggestions. A well-planned design critique session is like a 7-course formal meal. If you want to collect any feedback or comments, you, as the presenter, need to specifically point out and ask about. Here is what I'm doing. What do you think about it at first glance? What am I missing? Or how can I move forward? Without adequate planning, the presentation may confuse participants, or the critique discussion wanders off topic, leaving you frustrated that you are not getting the actionable feedback you were expecting to move the design process forward. Let's look at a straightforward approach on how to plan and run a successful design critique session. Many upfront works can be done to ensure the critique goes smoothly. First, send the session invitation in advance and try to keep the invited participants to a reasonable number. For example, for a 1-hour to a 90-minute session, inviting more than 7 participants to act as reviewers could potentially hinder the process of a productive design critique. For the presenters, define the goals and your scopes when scheduling the critique session, and include them in the meeting agenda. If possible, send out any information or brief prep materials so that the reviewers can orient themselves to the project, objectives, and what you want from them. Before the critique, reviewers need to understand the purpose of the session and the purpose of the project. It will help you shape your thinking process. Instead of what you want to do or want to see, think from the project's perspective. Also, be prepared to be mentally present and not multitask during a critique. Both presenters and reviewers need to be well rested before a critique session so that your brain can accept critique, or so that you can focus and provide a good critique. Another very important note is, don't come into a critique session when you are frustrated. Take a minute to leave the frustrations of the day outside the door to settle into the right mindset. Presenting work, whether in a critique setting or not, makes the presenter feel vulnerable. Remember to not to take feedback personally. Instead, keep your mindset on improving the product. Think about the following when you are about to receive any feedback. I am ready to listen to how things can improve. I am not being critiqued. I don't need to be defensive. I will have missed things. There will be gaps. The reviewers are my allies and are taking their time to help me make the project better. After each critique, say, "Thank you, you made a good point," even if it's difficult to hear. This attitude will make it easier to work through points of tension and will enable you to gain maximum value from the critique. While listening to the presentation, reviewers need to take notes, and before giving any feedback, go through your notes, form a strategy, and deliver the critique mindfully. Consider the following before you give the critique. Am I phrasing my feedback in a way that it can be received positively? Am I focusing on the work and not the person? I want to do a good job with my critique so that others will put their effort in the future into helping me by providing meaningful, positive critiques. It sounds pretty obvious, but too often, people give criticism without taking the time to put themselves in the presenter's shoes. You might be wondering, if the goal for the critique is to find shortcomings and pitfalls, then why do we need to spend so much time and effort in delivering positive feedback? Why not just directly point out the problems? When the limbic system produces positive emotions, prefrontal activity is heightened and drives enhanced mental functions, such as creative thinking and cognitive flexibility. Positive feedback often causes a positive emotional reaction, which has been associated with increased motivation. When we are feeling upbeat and happy, we are more likely to perform better on cognitively demanding tasks. However, negative emotions decrease our cognitive abilities. When we are stressed or frustrated, we struggle to think clearly and coordinate well with others. It will take us longer to take in new information and come up with new ideas. Here are some tips that can help reviewers to frame positive and constructive feedback. Number 1. Be specific. Organize feedback to be as clear as possible. Explain what is working and what isn't. Instead of, "I don't like the fonts and color. They don't look nice." Try, "The fonts and color combination makes the information on this page very confusing and hard to see. I didn't notice the hyperlinks among the text." Number 2. Do not rush into a solution. Take a step back and discuss concerns and questions around the current design. Instead of, "That element needs to be put on first," try, "How do you decide the priority of the design elements that need to be shown to the user first?" Number 3. Link feedback to goals. It's not about the personal preferences. Think about how the design meets or misses the goals. Instead of, "I think a green call to action button will make it more visible." Try, "To increase conversions, do you think this call to action button is clear enough?" Number 4. Limit negativity. Focusing on presenters' shortcomings doesn't enable learning or improving. It impairs it. Instead of, "I don't like how this questionnaire is designed. All questions are not well phrased. I think you have missed the point." Try, "Have you explored changing the current questions to other scales or metrics? What about the templates you used before?" The process of giving and receiving feedback can be exhausting for the reviewers as well as the presenters. Make sure to take breaks during a critique session. Design critique is an iterative process, and it doesn't end when the critique session is over. After the critique, for the presenters, you need to close the loop and set yourself up for the next critique. The presenters should create a summary of the feedback and action items and share it with the group. This helps all participants and team members who couldn't attend the session understand the output. After that, schedule a follow-up with the reviewers to let them see the changes were made based on their feedback. At the next critique session, express gratitude to the previous reviewers and highlight how their feedback informed your revision or new direction. As for the reviewers, after the critique session, be sure to provide a copy of your notes to the presenters. Introducing a culture of positive critique and collaboration takes time and investment, but it improves design by incorporating multiple perspectives and ultimately ensures that the end product meets the original goals. That's it for our topic of design critique. Feel free to reach out to the design team for any questions. Coming up next, we will be introducing the third topic for our Preparatory Materials Series, the user-centered mindset, identifying stakeholders' needs.